Hi, this is Joe Gilmore, and welcome to my video blog on Judgment and the new Aeon. It is July 1st, 2021, and I want to talk about the Great War that is occurring right now in the world. And what do I mean by the Great War? Well, you could call it World War III. I call it the Great War, and it's over freedom and the right to have it. And it's between those who want to be free and those who want to completely dominate the planet, all its resources, and everyone in it. In 1994, David Rockefeller said, "We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order." In America here, which is how we measure freedom in America, right? We're the barometer of freedom in the world. Our enemy is the great oppressor. And this is the Illuminati, the World Revolutionary Movement, whatever you want to call it. And they are using the Chinese Communist Party right now to do their dirty work, because these individuals like to remain hidden. They're narcissistic, they're sociopathic, they're psychopathic, and they're power mongers, and they can't get enough. And they need to use others to do their dirty work so they can remain hidden. And when they're done getting rid of whoever they want to get rid of, then they eat their own or just keep them until they're not useful anymore. So while the Chinese Communist Party probably thinks, they're going to, be the new world power, I don't know about that. I think that, like a lot of the other, empires in history, they're all controlled by the same types of evil individuals who don't really have alignment with anyone once it stops benefiting them. The moment someone isn't useful anymore, get rid of them. So what is this global transformation? Well, transformation indicates that we are going from one system, one paradigm to another. So we're talking about the world where freedom exists into a world where there is no freedom, where we are completely ruled as serfs under a fascistic tyranny. All we need is the right major crisis. Well, that major crisis is here. It's called COVID-19. And look at how they're drawing it out. And the nations will accept the New World Order. Accept. So we're talking about manufacturing consent. I brought this up in a previous blog. They need to manufacture our consent through the media, through entertainment. This is why I do all these blogs and videos on TV shows, and I talk about the symbolism, because I'm trying to show you that the symbolism speaks about the occult nature and the very deep desire for these people to control us. We find it in their symbolism. And once they've had us all deceived and confused us and get us all divided, divide and conquer, then we will accept the New World Order, and those who don't accept it will be either irrelevant or dead or gone. And the New World Order is the one where freedom is not in existence, doesn't exist anymore. In China, the Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989, they tried to rebel, they protested. And in America here, we saw a lot of protests last year, right? Well, in China in 1989, when they were protesting, they simply went out there and killed them. There was no talk about, whose, religion or race, or who has a right to speak up and who doesn't have a right to speak up. There was none of that. Estimates are between 300 to 3,000 people were killed during the massacre. So that's what you're going to get with the New World Order. Okay, it's not going to be, we're not going to have the luxury of complaining about the color of someone's skin or what someone said that bothered us. We're not going to have that luxury in the New World Order. So I talked about this trump card here, the devil, in a previous blog, and we talked about how deception is the main tool used by the media, by entertainment, political entities, political individuals that are compromised. They are all deceived. They use deception, and they manufacture our consent. And look at these two individuals. Their consent has been manufactured. They're wearing chains around their necks that are loose. They can take them off anytime they want, but they keep them on because they think that the situation is good. Oh, I've got these grapes here. Grapes represent hedonism. Wine, drinking wine, alcohol, jewelry, riches, money, fame, fortune. That's what that all represents. The horns, Dionysus, the great god Pan, all of that. So while your senses are stimulated, with sex and money and limousines, you gotta flash that triangle symbol, and you gotta, cover one eye, and you gotta give a little wink to your master, Satan, who is the master of deception. And so these people, they're not on top of the world. These are our role models, but they're slaves. And even as they speak out against racism and they, quote unquote, social justice and things like this, these people themselves are merely slaves. They're just talking to manufacture our consent. That's all they're trying to do. And behind it all is someone who doesn't care about any of us and who will eat his own once he's done using these people to accomplish his goal. Now, behind most of the powers of the world, almost every influential entity, corporation, political, the police, they all have Freemasons in their highest ranks. Now, not all Freemasons are evil, but Freemasonry as an institution is traditionally where some of the most powerful people hang out. And they put it in their entertainment that they in these movies and films and TV shows and stuff. And that's why I pointed out, because you need to know that even if you think this is silly, if you just think this is something that, some teenager who paints his fingernails black and burns some candles in the attic and uses his Ouija board, this is something that only these types of individuals are interested in. But that's not true at all. People who really understand the Kabbalah, this is thousands of years old. There's lots of wisdom in here. And what it is it's a map of your consciousness. Now, news headlines change every day. The weather changes every day. The sun moves around the earth every day. There's things that are transitory, but there's things that are more fixed. And you can use a metaphor and say the stars off in the distance, the constellations, they are more fixed than the planets that we can see moving, and the star and the moon. So consciousness is more of a fixed thing. So therefore, the study of consciousness is the study of something that is more grounded in the creation of Mother Nature or God, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe. So the structure of consciousness is a perfect thing. It is a thing of perfection. It is far more perfect than your iPhone. Your iPhone requires updating every month, every couple months. All this technology requires updating. Consciousness does not get updated. I mean, if it does, we can't really view it in real time. It happens in such long intervals that we can't really perceive it. The human body, Mother Nature, is perfect. Okay? So when we study consciousness, we're studying perfection. The way it transcends the superficial details of reality is that it's based in numbers. You can see there's numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Hebrew language is based in numbers. So we're talking about numbers, symbols, meaning, and sound. 4 different ways, at least, to convey a message within each point that's made. So this is how the information is preserved accurately, because numbers, some say, is the language of God, right? So as long as we can allocate everything to a number, it remains more or less unchanged. Now, Albert Pike, who was the Grand Master of Scottish Rite Freemasonry and thought to be the head of the Illuminati in the US many years ago, he wrote a book, a very influential Freemasonic book called Morals and Dogma. And if you read that book, it's very thick. You don't even have to read the whole thing, but just read it. And you will see that this man knew everything about everything. He knew everything you think. He speaks about rebellion. He speaks about the underground. He speaks about music. He speaks about the status quo, mainstream society, the rich, the poor, Machiavelli, the evil, moral decay, benevolence. He knows it all. And the point I'm trying to make to you is the ones who study the Kabbalah, these Freemasons, they study how society works. They're builders of societies. That's what they are. So what you see around you right now, the racial divisiveness, the divide and conquer strategy, that's what it is. There is a method to the madness. They are conducting it. They are builders of the society from the ground up. Even the rebellion, anything you think that you thought of and, this is all me and I created this movement and it's only, no. They know how to control it all because they spent a lot of time thinking about it, and you just thought this was all silly. I don't mean you as an individual, but a lot of people just think this stuff is insignificant and silly. So, if you're not going to look into it to try and benefit from it personally and spiritually, look into it to understand how the enemy is using information against you. So, the Judgment card is from the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, which is probably the most famous one in the world. And when I look at this card and I think about what's going on right now, I don't interpret this as being a situation where we're sort of standing around waiting for the apocalypse, and then this angel finally shows up and judges us and weighs our soul and says, well, are you worthy? Are you going to go down to hell? Are you going to go to heaven? I don't think that's what we're looking at right now. I think the judgment we're looking at today is our own personal judgment. We need to see clearly. We need to understand what's going on, and we need to snap out of it and wake up and see what's coming, because our perception is under attack. This is a war against our perception, against consciousness. So if we are so far removed from understanding consciousness in a thorough way, we won't even be able to turn around and catch the enemy before he's got us completely under his control. And unfortunately, a lot of people have already resigned themselves to go down with the ship, and they might turn to this blog and say, what is this guy even talking about? I mean, these are people that have already chosen. They've chosen to go to hell. They've chosen to go down with the Titanic, go down with the ship, and they're so ignorant they don't even know it. They're going to be going down with their eyes glazed. They're not going to know what's going on, what's happening, until someone kicks down their door and starts beating them over the head with a baton. Then they'll go, maybe something, how did this happen? Maybe I went down the wrong path somewhere. But it's too late for a lot of these people, unfortunately, which is why I don't really go through that much effort to try and convince people of what's going on. I try to just say what I have to say for here. So the Aeon card, this is an updated version of the Judgment card that Aleister Crowley did. Now, Aleister Crowley didn't paint this picture. Lady Frida Harris did, but it's based on his concepts. Now, if you think, why are you talking about Aleister Crowley? Isn't he the wickedest man on earth, and isn't he just evil and horrible, and didn't he sacrifice babies and such, and isn't he just a piece of crap? Well, first of all, Aleister Crowley and A.E. Waite, the guy I mentioned a moment ago, the one who made the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, they both were members of the Golden Dawn. This was a Hermetic order. This was basically a magician order, of magicians, back in the late 1800s. So these are real orders. They exist, and this is the Rose Cross here. So this gets into alchemy and Rosicrucianism, and this Rose Cross is on the back of every one of Crowley's cards. But both of these individuals were part of the same order, and they derived a lot of their information for the tarot cards from the Golden Dawn. And what's interesting is the Golden Dawn has a level called the First Order. And if you ever look at my blogs here that I've done on the Star Wars films, this one's for Rise of Skywalker Part 2, I believe. I discovered this picture that had the insignia for the Final Order, I think it's called. I forget what it's called at the moment. Two symbols of the bad guys. So the First Order, I notated in my blog on The Force Awakens that this is similar to the Black Sun logo. Heinrich Himmler's occult Nazi interests. They had this thing about the Black Sun and Saturn and all this. Well, and we know that elements of Nazism and World War II are very much incorporated into Star Wars at a lot of levels, especially with the stormtroopers and such. But this Black Sun thing, I kind of go into this in my blog on The Force Awakens, and in my studies discovered that there is a Black Sun cult in the extended Star Wars universe. So this isn't something that I just stumbled across haphazardly. I confirmed it on several levels. I also found that if you put this insignia, which is in the last Star Wars film, the bad guys, they're their insignia, if you place it inside, you can trace it out and you can get a unicursal hexagram. And this is the symbol of thelema for Aleister Crowley. So again, you could say I'm a nut sitting here drawing lines and trying to find things that aren't there, but I didn't put these angles in here that confirm these lines that go here. So what I'm saying is there is mathematical correspondences here to a unicursal hexagram, which is synonymous with Aleister Crowley. So I just wanted to mention that. And so if we look at the entry for Aleister Crowley in Wikipedia, now this isn't my attempt to say Aleister Crowley was a great man and you should all love him. I don't really care what anyone thinks of Aleister Crowley. I'm not a representative of his reputation, but I think it's important to point out this idea that he was this like the beast of Revelation, and he was just this baby blood drinking son of a bitch. He may have done those things, but if you look at his Wikipedia entry, there is not one single crime that he was ever charged with of any kind. He was a mountain climber. He was rich. He was born in a rich family, and there's lots of examples here showing that he was, on some level he had morals, and on other levels he was dedicated to being amoral. He was bisexual. He was a womanizer at times. He worshipped women in a way as well. So he was a complex human being, and a lot of us are complex human beings. And this whole cancel culture thing, when we enforce stereotypes like these Manson stereotypes and these Crowley stereotypes, we're really only hurting ourselves and making our society more ignorant, and we're just giving more power to these stereotypes, which after a period of time don't even really have any relation to the alleged inspiration. It's more just about creating a boogeyman. And if you go to the end of this, according to a BBC poll in 2002, it placed Crowley 73rd in a list of 100 greatest Britons. 100 greatest Britons, the beast of the Revelation, 666, is one of the 100 greatest Britons. It's also widely believed that he was an agent for the British intelligence, and this would explain a lot of his traveling, and he was heavily into the occult. He was a big part of bringing in, the new age of occultism into America. Apparently he knew Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote James Bond, which we know is all about British Secret Service. And, it's kind of an interesting read just to go through this Wikipedia entry. So there was a couple court cases that he was involved with, but these were cases where actually he was suing people for defamation because they were trying to defamate his character. And he was broke, and the only reason he did it was because he needed money. And he actually won in a couple of these cases. So again, the idea that he was like the worst, most evil person on the planet is not something that really has a whole lot of basis in reality. But he did have a sense of humor, and he did like messing around with people's perception of him, kind of like Ozzy Osbourne did in the 80s and 90s. And Ozzy Osbourne talks about this. He says, I'll milk it. I'll milk it to a point because I like dough. I like to make money. This is what Ozzy Osbourne said. Does he eat babies and eat bats? Well, he bit into a bat once, didn't he? But anyhow, so on this topic of 666 and the beast, I discovered something very interesting. There is this theory that 666 in Revelation is actually a reference to Nero Caesar. Now, this is a Roman emperor before the Roman Catholic Church. So in other words, Christianity was still very illegal, and Christians got burned. And this man burned Christians alive, Emperor Nero Caesar. One story is that he started a fire in his own city and then blamed it on Christians, and then he executed them all by putting them into a building and lighting it on fire and burning all these Christians alive. Another story is that he kicked his wife while she was pregnant, kicked her to death. Imagine that. And then after that, some think he felt guilty, so he went ahead and found a young boy, who resembled his wife that was deceased, castrated him, cut his penis off, and then had a faux marriage with this boy. And who knows what else he did to him. So this is the kind of person Nero was. And so you can already imagine, well, I can see how they would call him the beast of Revelation. And there's actually some websites that will tell you about the mathematical correspondence here and how the word Nero Caesar, the numerical value in Hebrew translates to 666. So we have a numerical correspondence as well. You might say, oh, that's got to be a joke, but if you look into this, you'll see. There's a lot of this out there, and a lot of scholars have looked into this idea of 616 and 666. So if the beast in Revelation is actually supposed to be Caesar, the Roman emperor, we're talking about the end of an era of rule, a time of rule. And so if we look at today what's going on, we see that we can't point to one figurehead. We can't, where is Caesar? You know, are we talking about the Pope here? Are we talking about the Rothschilds? Are we talking about the CCP? These people, they learn. They read their history. They know their history. They know that Hitler failed because you can't just go into people's house and slaughter them. You have to manufacture their consent. You have to work on them for a long time. Hitler was a big fan of propaganda, but you know, the divide and rule strategy, divide and conquer, you need to evolve your techniques. Divide and conquer is the policy of maintaining control over one's subordinates, that's us, or opponents, that's the rebellion to the New World Order. By encouraging dissent, that's exactly what they're doing right now. They're encouraging racism, they're encouraging this crisis of sexual identity, and everyone's persecuting everyone else, and these people are persecuting that people. And they create these false flag events, and then they overhype them, and they give the impression that there's all these different crises going on, and all these shootings. And I'm telling you, you've got to understand, and I know I'm probably speaking to the converted, anyone who's still watching this right now who has tolerated everything I've said, you're probably already a convert. But again, a lot of what I'm doing here is just kind of getting this off my chest. By encouraging dissent between the people, you prevent them from uniting in opposition. It's very simple, and it's kind of strange. You know, once you turn the corner and you see this stuff, it's very difficult not to see it. And then it's even more discouraging to see how many people just, you know, they don't see it. It's very weird. Now, we spoke about Freemasonry earlier, and Aleister Crowley was a Freemason. And so was A.E. Waite. So these people are all Freemasons. They're all into this, you know, occult stuff, magic, if you will, M-A-G-I-C-K. That's how Crowley spelled it, to differentiate it from, you know, the David Copperfield type of magic. So what we're seeing here with the Aeon card, now that we've, you know, discussed Crowley a little bit and hopefully made some of you realize that this whole thing about him being the beast of Revelation and all this is largely a sensationalist exaggeration to just utilize him as a boogeyman, kind of like Manson. And now Marilyn Manson is under fire. He's played the boogeyman a lot too. Now again, Marilyn Manson may be a piece of crap. He may really have done horrible things. I don't know. I don't know the guy. But I'm talking about the way society uses these boogeymen for purposes that are not about you know, trying to define morality and trying to make society better. It's not about that. They're just tools to be used to scare us and into coercion. So when we look at this card, the Aeon, we're talking about what's happening right now. We're right in the middle of the blackening process, is what I would call it. Now, what is the blackening process in alchemical terms? Well, in alchemy, negrito, or blackness, means putrefaction or decomposition. Many alchemists believe that as a first step in the pathway to the philosopher's stone, all alchemy ingredients had to be cleansed and cooked extensively to a uniform black matter. So what's happening is society is going through a blackening process. They are trying to purify society. Think racial hygiene from World War II. They want these leaders that are into all this stuff, they want to cleanse the earth of the rebels, the people that are going to rebel and not go with the program. And the people that do exist, they want to purify them with propaganda and indoctrination. They're putting this critical race theory and communist propaganda into the school curriculums now and into the military. So this is all the blackening process. And this goes back to ancient Egypt, which was called the land of Chem, the Black Earth. That was the original name of Egypt because of the fertile ground, but also in the alchemical sense. So if we look at this card, the Aeon, what I mean by this is what's happening right now, besides what I just said, the blackening process, which involves, when you're heating up metals and different materials, they will turn different colors as the different aspects of that element burn away. If you've ever tried to extract oils from flowers, perfumes and things like this, these require alchemical processes, and you have to burn things away. If you take CBD oil or separate it from the THC, I mean this gets into chemistry and things like this. We separate the different aspects. So this card is meant to be viewed in a 3D manner. We're looking at different layers of reality here. But if you step back and you look at the most basic layer, what you're seeing, what I believe you're seeing, is a baby's head coming out of a vagina. Okay, Crowley was incorporated sexual energy and sexual symbolism into everything because he seemed obsessed with the idea that everything had the sexual aspect to it. And I agree in the sense that human beings are animals, and I think it's about just acknowledging the animal side of the human being. But by doing this, we're also acknowledging the consciousness that observes the animal side and is constantly trying to define what it is. So the perfect unity of the physical aspect, the animal aspect, and the intellectual aspect gives us the beauty of what we see here. And we see the Egyptian goddess Nuit here, and we see Horus as the child and as the ruler. So it's interesting that Horus, the grown man, the ruler, who, these both represent the sun, by the way, the rising sun, the setting sun. And you see the ruler sitting in the throne, so he's kind of fixed. So this is kind of like the established world, the established rule. But then you see the child who's about to be born, who's in the forefront of the picture, standing over the fire. This letter Shin, this Hebrew letter, represents fire. And they say that revolutions, the new civilizations are often born of fire, born of blood. And so it's just interesting. We're talking about the blackening process and heating things up when you boil water to boil away all the impurities. This is what's happening right now, the blackening process. And we've got the sign for Libra here. So we talked about judgment. Libra, that's the scales. Okay, Lady Liberty holds the scales. So we have to judge what we're seeing. We need to understand what's going on here and be clear-headed and not, when you're in a battlefield, when there's a war going on, there's bullets flying by your head and things like this. You have to think, you have to take cover, you have to attack, you have to lay low, you have to do what you have to do, but you have to think. And you can't get caught up in the fog of war. And so you need to be the judge. And if we make the right choices, when we get to the other side of this, we can be renewed like a child into a new world. Not the new world order, but the new world of the golden age, the new golden age of mankind, where we'll be able to develop into our next phase of existence. And we can finally be free of the propaganda and the powers that be, or at least have them at bay so that they are not the ruling power. Or if we make the wrong choice, we can either not survive, or we can be the child that wakes up on the other side of this, completely repressed from birth and indoctrinated and 10 times worse than anything we've ever seen. So we have to make a decision which child we're going to be born to be on the other side of this great war that we are in.